Okay, next item up is application 2017-019, 471 Stanwich Road, Rocco V. DeAndrea, Inc. for Ning Li and Wan Gao for wetland remediation. Doreen, please.
Okay. This application was submitted to address a violation that was cited in June 2016. They're proposing to remove tree trunks and fill deposited within the wetland and buffer area, and they're going to revegetate the area with native trees and shrubs. They're also proposing to reconstruct a retention basin that was previously approved under a permit in 1976. At the March meeting, the applicant was asked to increase the flow path of the stormwater through the retention basin and increase the diversity of the plantings in the basin. They have submitted a site plan that increases that elongated flow path. Currently, the basin has a grassy bottom. They are amenable to planting native shrubs and herbaceous vegetation within that, which is a condition of the staff report. Also, the abutting neighbor to the north asked that the project be tabled to allow her engineer to take a look at the retention basin to ensure that it wouldn't impact her property. Rizzoli has looked at the plan and does not find that any impacts are likely as a result of the retention basin. He did express some concern that the 2-inch orifice on the drainage outlet pipe was too small and may become plugged up over time or very quickly. The applicant has agreed to revise the plan to show a 4-inch orifice. And a portion of the retention basin is located within the gas transmission easement. They've also stated that they are open to relocating that outside of that easement. Staff's recommending issuance of an order with the conditions provided.
Okay, thank you, Doreen. Mr. DeAndrea?
The only thing I would ask the agency to consider is that the northern edge of the detention basin does encroach slightly over the gas easement, but it's just earth. There's nothing structural, so I'd prefer to leave it as is. I mean, if anything needed to be done in the easement, which is typically just fly over and cutting the brush, it wouldn't be impacting. This goes from 0 on the western end to about 2 feet on the eastern side, shallow berm. Matt Pop is here to discuss if anything needs to be discussed about the planting plan, but we did agree to the other conditions. The 2-inch orifice had been originally designed. We never like to see that, so we're more than happy to increase it to 4-inch, which we usually suggest is the minimum that should be required on any control structure. So with that, I think we've addressed the concerns. They've done a good job understanding the error of their ways, I hope.
Okay, thank
With
you.
that, I have nothing further to add.
Okay, thank you. Looks like the planning plan's pretty self-explanatory. Any questions for Mr. DeAndrea? Follow up. Public questions or comments on this? I guess the neighbor, concerned neighbor is not in attendance tonight? Okay. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next up, new applications for review. First is application 2017-033, 21 Birch Lane, Environmental Land Solutions LLC for Paula Katz for installation of plantings and restoration of wetland and buffer areas. Doreen, please.
Okay, so there's an extensive history of a violation on this property that goes over many years. It involves the encroachment into a high-quality wetland on the southwestern part of the property. It was a wooded buffer that has been encroached into increased lawn. The violation originated in 2009 and it remains unresolved. It has actually expanded further back toward the wetland despite several enforcement actions. There's a timeline that was attached to your staff report that kind of goes through that for you. The applicant's proposing to restore about 3,200 square feet of area that was once wooded, that is now lawn, utilizing mid-story trees, shrubs, and herbaceous vegetation. There's also a stone walkway proposed through the area. Thank you, Matt. And they're also going to define the buffer with stone pillars periodically along that revised buffer area. In addition, there's a patio around the pool that has been expanded. And then, here we are. And then there's also another area of a spa patio and a stone wall that was, excuse me, also included that did not have a wetland permit. That impervious cover likely is under 1,000 square feet, so we need an exemption form that needs to be confirmed, and then we need the drainage exemption form. There's a stone demarcation feature on the southern part of, it's on the inside here of this area that they've encroached into this area over the years and made the lawn larger, and so now there's a demarcation feature on the southern part that I recommend be removed so that there's no encroachment in the future. Also, the demarcation pillars are pretty widely spaced, and I would recommend that there be further demarcating features in between them. They can consist of boulders or trees or something to close the gaps. We did get a revised plan that has one boulder in the center of two of the pillars, but it's just one boulder, and up on the northern part, or I think it's the western side, there's still a 30-foot gap there that I think would be beneficial to have demarcation extended in that area. Utilizing the 2009 permit map, a minimum of 5 trees, pretty sizable 12 to 30 dBH were removed in the current restoration area. So staff's asking for a revised planting plan to include a minimum of 5 deciduous canopy trees in the approximate location of where they were removed. We did receive a revised planting plan that had amelanchier. There was, I believe, 3 of them. They've added 2 maple trees. Staff would like to see the 5 deciduous trees in addition to the understory trees to restore that area. At this time, staff's recommending that the agency delay until the issues are addressed.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, Matthew Pop, landscape architect, professional wetland scientist from Environmental Land Solutions. I did prepare a revised plan. I'm just going to submit them to Doreen. If it's going to get continued, maybe she could hold them.
Okay.
The revised plan is on this colored sheet before you. Just going through the 5 items that Doreen kind of mentioned. There was some impervious area, patio, and a hot tub area added, and I think that measures about 600 square feet of additional impervious surface, and we're going to have to probably get an engineer to look at that to fill out the exemption form. Have to be an engineer to fill that out. We did there were 3 understory trees, the shad, and I did increase those to a 2 to 2.5 inch caliber and added 2 red maples. So now there are 5 trees that are 2 to 2.5 inch caliber in this location. And we also increased the height of the shrubs to 3 to 4 feet in height. The fourth, on the back of the existing lawn area, there's a low stone wall. It's probably a foot to 18 inches in height. It's dry laid. I think that would, the owner would like to keep that. We didn't see a need to remove that. It does provide some wildlife habitat there. And then the demarcation pillars. There's 2 here, and the walkway path goes between them. There's another 2 here, and the walkway path goes between them, and it's a loop path. There's another pillar there and another pillar there. And in the center, we added just another stone that would be flush with the grade as another demarcation feature. Now, if we needed to add another one, I think that would be fine. And then lastly, the violations were done, I think, by the owner's ex-husband. So she was wondering, instead of paying the 3 times the application fee, if that would be waived at this point, since she wasn't really responsible for this.
Mr. Poppett, you said that the demarcation, the boulders were flush with grade,
Well, there's
so they'd be completely submerged,
no,
just
there's
the top?
just one is, there's a pillar here, which is, I think I have about 2.5 feet in height. We kind of want to match a pillar that's used, up here.
Are they,
One here, there's two here, and the pathway goes between those pillars.
Got it.
And then there's another one up here. So there's a total of 6 pillars, so it's, I think it's pretty visible. She didn't want to see just a boulder laying there. And then we added another stone right about here, and that one would be flush with the grade. So there's 6 pillars and the 7th stone. So there's 7 across that line.
So the one that's flush,
I'm not sure.
how does that convey to somebody
Yeah.
that it means anything?
Well, you could see it. It'd be easily for somebody to see that there's a stone there, and that's the edge of the lawn. So the lawn would not go beyond that stone.
So my yard has some random stones, but they don't mean anything, because visually I would think of a flush stone,
It'd be,
sort of a plaque on that flush stone. I don't think it represents anything to anybody.
well, in this lawn, there's no stones. It's highly maintained, as you
Oh,
might
I've been
know.
there, yep.
So, just seeing the one stone there would be, to me, something would be,
How about if it was partially buried and there was landscaping associated with it, so it would be more camouflaged?
there's landscaping behind it, so, yeah.
But the shrubs are all the way to the back, and then there's ferns up front. This property does have
The
a
history.
pretty substantial
Yes.
repetitive history. So it's hard to look at things where you're like, I don't think that one's
Fine.
such a great delineation feature, but
We could
the
raise that
history
one.
suggests that that's not such a,
We could raise that one.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say that, so the shadblow are fine, glad they're increased in size, but they're still not canopy trees. So 5 canopy trees, what's the rationale for having less than what was taken down? And those were significant size trees, actually, at 12 to 30-inch DBH.
It's not all that big a space, the area. And I felt, 5 trees in there, but 3 kind of understory trees would be the shad, and then the 2 larger red maples would be the canopy trees. Just for the space, it seemed appropriate, the spacing on that.
So you're suggesting that the
But-
5, 12 to 30-inch DBH were, I mean, I'm not sure how 12 to 30-inch can coexist happily, and 5, 2 to 2.5-inch caliper trees can't
But
coexist
if you
happily.
wanted to make them, all, red maples, I think that would be acceptable.
Would be fine. Oaks seem to like it there, but the red maples would be fine.
And I guess the other open question is the removal of the low stone wall.
It is an open question.
So that is, we point to where that is on it runs through there.
It's right at the perimeter of the disturbance.
Right, and there's no disturbance to the left of the, how is that maintained on the
I think they put
left?
in some spruce years ago, so that's the only kind of disturbance beyond that.
Okay,
So no real disturbance. It's mainly wooded.
okay,
It should say that members Benton, Rogers, and Galvin were out to the site.
okay.
That should be on the record.
Any thoughts on the stone wall?
Well, probably like to see the stone wall removed,
Okay.
but
It's an expensive stone wall, long to
Yeah, I think part of it might go into the, encroach into the wetland in this portion here, so then maybe that portion, gets relocated.
Okay, well, I guess the question is if we're going to continue this and look at it next month, or do we feel we don't have conditions anyways, right?
No, I don't
You
have
can-
conditions.
So I think maybe you revisit that with staff, the stone wall. I don't see a need for it, but I can understand if it's, some of it needs to stay.
my thinking is this. Obviously, it's expensive to put the wall in, and it's
Yeah,
going to be
that's-
expensive to take the wall out. However, the wall sitting there is just an invitation to just sort of inch back toward the wall with the lawn. So I'd prefer to see it out, and if there's a much stronger way of keeping people out of that area, maybe it can stay.
How about if
Well said.
portions were removed and then connect the area between the paired pillars? So you were saying that you thought that it might be appropriate to take, I'm blind myself,
Like I said.
take some of the wall out here where the wetland? And then what if it was just restacked in between the two? So it would have an aesthetic value greater than a floating boulder, and it would be more of a firm line.
I could run that by the owner.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, for the record. Okay,
The other item was just the fee, and that,
well, I would like to table that until next month,
okay.
but I don't really see a reason for reducing it at this point.
No, but the history of this violation, that the first violation, the agency allowed a repositioning of the limit of lawn, and then there were 3 subsequent violations to that.
So there's been a lot of staff time expended against
There's
this.
been a lot of staff time expended.
Well, it's not only that, it's the fact that since there were so many violations, I find it hard to believe that the wife in this situation was completely unaware of what was going on. So I am not in the mood to relieve that.
All right, is there a motion to continue or to delay?
motion to delay.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Thanks.
There's proof I was out there.
You still moving?
Not since I swore.
Okay. Okay, that was Birch Lane. Application 217-036, 15 Stonebrook Lane, Joseph F. Rizzoli, P.E. LLC, for Dario Irseg, I'll make that my guess, for construction of a residential addition and drainage 77 feet from wetlands. Doreen, please.
Okay, so this is a violation that was found. They're proposing, or they've built a residential addition. They've replaced the septic pump and tank in the front of the house. They installed an underground electric line, and they are working on drainage improvements. A majority of this work is located outside the 100-foot setback, or it's well setback. The primary concern is the drainage located at the front of the property and to the rear of the property. The drainage system, the owners would actually like to upgrade the existing drainage system by rebuilding a watertight tank at the front of the property and install a new drainage pipe. To the rear, they're looking to replace the current drain with a curtain drain. Both these pipes will converge to the southern end of the residence, along with a third footing drain to release into a newly constructed dry well, which is over here in this location. And then any overflow from the well will discharge into a riprap outlet at the northern end of an intermittent watercourse. So this is the intermittent watercourse, and the wetland extends on this area. There is a planting plan that's been provided that stabilizes and remediates that area of disturbance right at the outlet pipe. There were some chunks of asphalt that were exposed when they did the excavation that they'll take out and they're going to replace with clean fill. There's a boulder demarcation. There's a northern wetland here that's high quality that supports vernal species. They are going to extend the existing boulders over to this tree area just to close it off and to further protect that area. There's an erosion control fence that goes right along the southern wetland. It hugs it, and staff's just asking that the erosion control be pulled out to the edge of disturbance to minimize any disturbance to the wetland. Staff's recommending an order be issued with the conditions in the staff report.
Okay, thank you. Anyone? Mr. Kenny?
Good evening. Bill Kenny. I'm here on behalf of the owner in place of Mr. Rizzoli. I did prepare the planting plan for the area disturbed just north of that intermittent watercourse. The owner finds the proposed conditions acceptable and don't have anything else to offer, but would be pleased to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Kenny regarding this application? No? Any public questions or comments on this? Would someone like to make a motion, please?
Motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, very good, thank you. Next up is application 2017-038, 5 Orchard Hill Lane, New England Aquatic Services LLC for Craig and David Kogut for dredging of a pond. Ms. Sesto, please.
Okay. This is a pond that resides in the front of the house. It was dredged last about 30 years ago, and looking to reestablish some depth associated with it. Historically, there were trees, this is the road out here, and there were scattered trees in this area, intermixed with, it looks like, lawn based on aerial photographs. Wetlands did also extend out in this area, but those don't seem to exist anymore, so over the 30 years or so of the recent life of this pond, there definitely been some changes associated with it. All in all, there is lawn up to the edge of the pond, which gives great opportunity to more holistically look at the pond as far as water quality, maintaining a 15-foot no-mow strip and getting some trees to, in the long run, establish some shade would be beneficial. This pond does outlet into a stream system that discharges to the Byram, so for the benefit of that stream, the pond itself, and of course the Byram, which has its impairments, doing more than just deepening the pond, but looking at some of the other issues associated with the pond and looking to improve those. I have spoken with New England Aquatic and Matthew, correct? And the plans have been resubmitted showing that 15-foot buffer with red maples placed at intervals of 20 feet along the edge of the pond, which is terrific. The plans, with the extent of lawn over here, the dredging operation, which can be rather disruptive, there's plenty of room and easy enough to repair in the long run. So the staff report has, it says delay, but based on the new information that was submitted, I would recommend an approval with our, the applicable special conditions and the normal standard conditions.
Okay, thank you. Anything?
Good evening. My name is Matthew Vogt. I'm owner of New England Aquatic Services. Essentially, we just want to dredge the pond using a hydraulic method, pumping the material out versus bringing in a traditional excavator. We decided to add on there after speaking with Ms. Sesto, the no-mow for 15 feet in the trees like she discussed, and hopefully reestablish that buffer that is pretty much non-existent at this point. So I'm not sure if there's any other questions about the process or if you need details.
I guess my only question would be wildlife management strategy. Were you only doing a portion of the pond and then allowing whatever critters are there to move before you do the other part?
Sure.
So
So the
staging.
kind of the advantage of the process by pumping the material hydraulically out is that really only the areas that we're actually actively working in are affected as far as major turbidity. So the rest of the pond is sort of a zone of refuge for any fish or amphibians that need to get away. And at the same time, we usually encompass the area that we're actively working in with a turbidity curtain to even more localize it to the one spot. And then we move around the pond as we start to reach the hard bottom.
Okay. Agency questions for the applicant? Public questions or comments on this? No?
I have a question more of curiosity than anything else. If the pond is originally excavated from the stream, where are you going to find the hard bottom? Do you know where it is? Have you probed for it?
Typically, how we determine the scope of our projects is just by probing down. So what's built up in there is mostly soft biological material, leaves that have broken down, mud that's washed in. So when we probe down through that, you'll strike a hard bottom eventually. It's not necessarily rock, but you meet resistance, and that's typically what's kind of the original depth that we consider trying to reach.
Okay, so you're not going to take it any lower than that?
No, just restoring it to.
Thank you.
Is the material going to be reused on site, or is it going to be taken off site? And
No,
has
the material is going to be taken to a yard of a contractor who's going to mix it and sell it as topsoil, I believe.
Okay, is there a plan for, or requirement for any testing of the sediment? I guess that's a question for staff.
We can certainly make that.
What's that?
We can certainly make that a condition.
Well, typically, we test it because you have 30 years of something settling out in that pond. So I think testing of the sediment, because it may determine where you dispose it.
Sure, absolutely.
Or how you,
In previous projects, not in Greenwich, but in other places, we use what's called a T-clip test, which tests for all hazardous materials, heavy metals. It's what a landfill would require before they'd be willing to take the material anyway.
Okay.
So that's something that we can do to the material before we have it removed, or if you'd like, before the project is started.
Do that as a condition.
yeah, I think it doesn't need to be done before, I don't think, because, I guess I'll ask staff. Do you want that tested prior to starting?
Yeah.
Because then we
Yes,
know
because
where it's going to.
that's our window to get everything,
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
you also have the concern that if you do have hazmat in there, you may decide you don't want to do it because it's too expensive to
Sure,
get rid of the
absolutely.
stuff.
So you would just take grab samples or at various points around the pond, right?
Right. We would just take a few samples and have them tested by a
On a pond that big, how many samples would you typically take?
I guess I'd probably look for advisement from the soil scientist as to how many he thinks are necessary. My gut instincts is probably do three different distances from the inflow.
Okay. So I'd say a minimum of 3, that would be our thing. Okay, thank you. Any other agency questions? Public? No. I'll make a motion to approve on the condition that a minimum of 3 sediment samples are taken and tested prior to commencement of any work.
And that includes the applicable normal standard, special conditions, and the standard conditions.
Yes.
Thank you.
Correct. Is there a second?
Second.
I think Bill got there just fast. All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. Okay, next up, 2017-040, 5 Lighthouse Lane, Rocco V. DeAndrea, Inc., for Charles E.P. Otten, incremental to S. Otten, for demolition of existing residence, construction of a new single-family residence, deck, driveway, drainage, grading, and landscaping 2 feet from wetlands. Mr. Clausen, please.
All right. This property owner had a permit that would have allowed them to raise their house up out of the 100-year flood zone. That permit expired. They now have decided to replace the house. The new house will be, have its first floor elevated, I think 2 feet above the 100-year flood elevation. The new house is going to be, and driveway impervious coverage is going to be less than the existing house. So this is a conditional residential tear-down exemption. They're not going to be doing any drainage detention or anything because they don't have to. They will be replacing catch basins as they reconfigure their driveway. So that's the only drainage I think that they're going to be doing. I did recommend in the staff report that they inspect the pipe that currently runs under the existing house because they're going to be, in there, and it's, this was a recommendation from DPW staff. Let's see, and the only other recommendation was, you have the pointer? Was that there's this wetland here at the south end of the property is a very wet lawn, and we've had applications in the neighborhood over here on Ballwood Road, both private property and town-owned property, where we required some restoration of areas like that. So the agency may add a condition to what actually I did put it in here, condition 2, to have a planting plan for that area. So I think this is a pretty straightforward application, and I recommend the agency issue a permit with the conditions in the staff report.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Welcome.
Nothing really to add. We do agree with all the conditions, including the planting plan to the south. I did want to point out, though, that we did move the house a little to the east to get off the drain pipe. It did cross under the original system. And we did maintain the same discharge points, which are in the form of level spreaders on the northwest, the southwest and northwest, I guess, corner of the property. Other than that, we have no objection to conditions and appreciate the input.
Okay. Thank you. Agency questions for Mr. DeAndrea on this? Are there public questions or comments on this application? Would someone like to make a motion?
Motion to approve?
With the added condition of a planting plan being
That I think
submitted? Okay,
That's
Okay.
in there as number 2.
excellent. Very good. Is there a second? Second. Okay, all in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you. Approved. Okay, next up, 2017-042, 65 Conyers Farm Drive, Rocco V. DeAndrea, Inc., for 65 Conyers Farm LLC, care of Eric Sobel, for construction of a single-family residence pool, pool house, drainage, grading, and landscaping 40 feet from wetlands. Ms. Sesto, please.
Okay, this is one of those lovely Conyers Farms parcels that's a little bit more than 15.5 acres. The proposal is to consume about 11% of that, or 1.7 acres, on the eastern side of the property up along Conyers Farm to develop a home in an area that is partially wooded, partially a meadow in transition with multiflora rose, with the remainder of the lot undisturbed, and much of that is actually in a conservation easement. This parcel is not subdividable, and the conservation easement does encompass about 60% of the site. So the plan that's up here is actually is a focal point of the development, and the lot itself continues much further to the west. The drive comes off of Conyers Farm in a normal fashion. This is the transitional meadow, drops down to the house, which has a series of retaining walls to balance the grades on the north. And to the rear, there's 2 terraces that step down to a pool and a pool house. And then back in here, there's a rubble stone wall, which defines the limit of the rear yard. There's a wetland that comes down alongside the south. There is another wetland up here to the north of the residence. This line here, that's kind of boxy, is the limit of the easement. There's a rain garden up here, which does show about 6 trees to be removed, but past storms, since the survey was updated for trees at any rate, some of those trees have come down, so there's actually only 3 trees to come down, and it's not quite a woodland clearing. There's next to no understory out here, presumably due to browsing, kind of typical and sad. There is also an infiltrator to the west of the house to catch what gravity can't bring to the north. Leaching fields are up on the slope outside of the regulated areas, and I think that about covers it. I have a recommendation to approve, and special conditions are provided. We've got some pieces to discuss, but overall, I think the plan is in good shape. And I should note that members Benton, Gavin, and Rogers were out of the site. Galvin, excuse me.
4 horsemen of the apocalypse, yes. Welcome.
Plan that Mr. Conti, John Conti, has prepared here really shows the entire parcel. It's a little bit easier to see the contrast between the small development envelope and the massive area of natural conditions. We did agree to all the conditions that Pat had suggested, including the boulder demarcation to the south side, so there's no objection there. We also noted that there was a request to highlight the monumentation on the northwest side near the detention basin. We have no objection to making that a little more identifiable. And with that, I think we covered all the high points, and we certainly do agree to all the conditions that have been suggested.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Conti, anything to add?
I can add one thing.
Unless you have any questions.
Just
Okay.
additional planting that you suggested in the southwest, which is to enhance an area of the lawn.
Yeah, there's a portion of lawn that drains down to this open watercourse. And due to the lack of understory in the woods, I had requested that a planting plan be submitted to enhance the herbaceous layer. And I think once the trees are cleared for the residential development, that the herbaceous layer should thrive and do better to enhance the water quality before it hits that open watercourse.
Yeah, we created, as per your suggestion, a very robust planting plan along that whole drainage area so that it will act as a biological filter for waters coming from this lawn. So that's the planting plan specifically for this, and this is the rain garden that will actually be a very robustly planted space, not just a green basin. And then, again, as Tony pointed out, this really does show that the majority of the property is being left.
Great, thank you.
Yes, when we were out to the site today, the stone wall that's shown back here, it does lack some definition in
Yes,
places.
we know that, yes.
Is that going to be enhanced?
Wasn't intended.
There's plenty of stones
Western
out there.
side, fix it.
You mean like a farmer-style dry stack? I'm sure that.
Yeah,
we can
just
do that.
restack.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Any other agency questions, comments? Public questions or comments on this application? Okay. Would someone like to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
And that's including the restacking of the wall to the west?
Yes.
It is.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, all in favor?
John.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you much. Okay, moving along, 2017-043, 41 Rock Ridge Avenue, Rocco V. DeAndrea, Inc., for Brandon and Blair Hall, for demolition of the existing residence, construction of a new single-family residence, pool house, sport court, driveway, patio, drainage, grading, and landscaping adjacent to wetlands. Mr. Clausi, please.
Well, as the chairman just recited, this is a pretty intensive redevelopment of this property. The wetland is maintained as mostly as lawn and has been historically. There is a hedgerow of a combination of native trees and shrubs and non-native and invasive species that runs through the wetland right along the eastern property line. The proposed house, actually, all of the proposed structures are somewhat further from the wetland than what previously existed on the property. There was an in-ground pool here where they're showing a rain garden. That's not going to be a pool anymore. It's going to be a rain garden. The house over here is a little bit further back from the wetland. There were some accessory structures on the site that have been, are not going to be rebuilt. They've been taken down, but then there are all these other things that are going to be going on up in the at the western end of the site. This will have a pretty significant increase of impervious coverage, about 30%. And the stormwater management system does need to be revised, and additional information needs to be submitted according to the DPW comments I attached to your staff report. We did get a revised planting plan that I included in your folders at your places this evening. And it does address the comments that I had, which would be removal of invasives along the fence line and reestablishment of a tree canopy, not necessarily a forest canopy-sized tree canopy, but a mixed canopy, which is exactly what this planting plan does with red maple, flowering dogwood, and shadbush. The number of shrubs has been increased, and the number of herbaceous plants has been increased to reflect the larger area that's being restored from lawn to a natural buffer between the rain garden and this narrow wetland along the property line. So I think that part of the plan, in my opinion, is fine. But I would recommend we delay until the drainage issues have been worked out with DPW.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Welcome.
Yep, thank you. We've read the comments from DPW. While they are not significant, they do need some attention, so we'll take care of those. We have a meeting scheduled with Mr. Marucci for May 3rd. He won't be available until then, so in the meantime, we're touching up the plans and addressing some concerns that he raised. We don't believe that we'll have any trouble addressing them, so if the staff recommendation is to delay, we understand why, and we will take care of everything in the meantime.
Okay, thank you.
Just one question.
Yes, sir.
Where the pool was.
Where the pool was,
It's full of water now, so, but it's going to be okay for a rain garden, right? I mean, in terms of.
yes, what we're proposing is to use that depression with some filtering material and then allow it to filter down and then dissipate down through the natural corridor that continues on adjacent to the east and then finally out to the south. We had worked on that property previously, so we're pretty familiar with it. Most of the activity is being pulled to the south. As Bob pointed out, a lot of buildings are not going to be reconstructed. There is an increase of about 5,600, if I recall correctly, basically attendant to the sports court, so that's where the increase came from. As a result of taking down everything, of course, we're in one way or another impacting a great deal of the property, so we understand that that comment was well stated. Anyway, we're touching up the drainage aspects. We'll address DPW comments, and planting plan, as you said, addresses your concerns in that regard, so hopefully by the end of May, we'll be in good order.
So you're removing the pool or coring it to make it?
It's gone.
Oh, it's
Just
gone.
removing the pool,
It's gone.
yeah.
Okay.
But could you explain, Tony, why it was holding water? It was quite
Why
a
that
lot.
area?
Yeah,
There is a relatively high groundwater table in the area. It's moving down to the east. And when they take a depression and take out a pool like that, they've demolished the outbuildings and the pool, so they don't always create. There's too much silt in the bottom when it settles, is what the answer is. So what we do is we have to filter through that and then allow the water to then, after it seeps down through the filter medium, and then it discharges out to the south,
Do you have to?
the east rather.
Do you have to remove that silt in order to make an effective rain garden?
Right. The things that Mr. Marucci comments about on our southern side is that we didn't have quite enough clearance above the groundwater. Sometimes we try to maintain the existing grade rather than try to artificially raise it, but in this case, he insists that we go up to the 2 feet above. So in essence, what we're doing in the pool the same way is we have to make a filter medium of sand, and then at the bottom of that, we actually can under-drain it to take it away at that point. So we have to work above that high groundwater elevation. Sometimes Scott's suggestion is that we put a liner underneath it so that the groundwater doesn't get up. I don't agree with that, but that's the extremes that he wants us to address, and that's what his concern is here.
Do you have to bring any fill into
Yes,
the
sir.
project?
Yes.
How much?
Well, I don't know how much overall, but we have to import select material for the rain gardens, the filter material.
But nothing else, creating berms and?
We're not making a tremendous amount of change to that. We're working with the topography. That's why those stepped walls are there, but they're only, a foot or two in the steps.
So the water's really filtering, not infiltrating.
Correct.
Okay.
When we have high groundwater, there's not much else we can do, so we have to import it and then filter it down and then allow it to dissipate. We have elevation in our favor, and that's why we have a berm around the eastern side of the rain garden.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. DeAndrea? Any public questions or comments on this application? Someone like to make a motion, please?
Motion to delay?
Is it- Mr. Benton seconds, all in favor?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Next is number 7. It's 2017-045, 86 Cutler Road. Mastro Giancomo, sorry, I probably butchered that, Engineering, PC for Cutler Road LLC for construction of a new single-family residence, driveway, pool house, drainage, grading, and landscaping 10 feet from wetlands. Mr. Clausi, please.
All right. The agency looked at this property back in December last year in a cease and correct hearing, and earlier in the fall, I guess it was, staff became aware of a filling issue back in this vicinity on the property, and a number of trees had been cut off toward the base of that fill slope. Not going into excruciating detail on it, but agency records indicated that the former edge of fill was further to the east than the existing edge of fill, which I think shows up on the topo on your application plan sets. So the agency set a deadline of the March application submittal deadline for submission of this application, which the applicant did submit by, but gave some pretty specific instructions about determining the extent of the filled wetlands, testing the fill in the central portion of the property because, redevelopment of this with a new house and everything, and the former use of this by a landscaping contractor raised concerns about what might be in that fill. and submitting a plan to remove the fill and restore the filled wetlands. These were things that the agency wanted to see. The applicant did get the fill tested, and those fill analyses came back clean. Let's see. This application is sort of a hybrid because at the cease and correct hearing, the property owner stated that they wanted to redevelop the property. The agency recognized that in correcting the violation, it could be considered as a package deal, so this is why the redevelopment proposal is before us. Unfortunately, we don't have a restoration proposal before us. I think there's a general statement in the application packet that the fill will be removed and the area restored, but we really need details as to what restoration means and a specific sort of before and after where what the grading is going to be back in this wetland, which, by the way, was determined by Steve Danzer. He looked at the property to the north and the south where the existing wetland line ends, and this is just a line drawn between those 2 points. And I think that it's reasonable, it's a reasonable line given the nature of this floodplain wetland and the nature of the properties to the north and south. There aren't a lot of crazy zigs and zags of the wetland line. It's pretty uniform, not necessarily a dead straight line, but this is a close approximation of where the wetland that was filled had been. We don't have an adequate biological narrative. This plays in again to the question of what the restoration will end up being in here. We need somebody to look at the floodplain forest and give us a plan of how they're going to extend that habitat type up to the restored wetland line. Okay, I don't know why I wrote this here. Alternatives to the proposed development have not been provided. We do have some alternatives in the revised narrative, which shows some other variations of this basic proposal, which has retaining walls 5 feet off the restored wetland line, and the house in the front, a pool and a pool house in the middle of the rear part of the property, and a sport court over here. There is also a drainage infiltrations in the backyard and a septic system and rain gardens at either corner of the landscape envelope. I guess we don't have alternatives that would include layouts providing more than a 5-foot separating distance between this reestablished wetland line and the retaining walls. I have to state that, I met with the applicant and their agent, I think twice, and this is the plan that came out of those conversations. It's not the type of buffer that we ordinarily see, so the agency can take that into consideration as they review this and ask the applicant questions as you see fit. We have not gotten a site-specific construction sequence for how this project would be implemented, including the removal of the fill and the restoration of that area. DPW Engineering Division has looked at the drainage submission and found it to be inadequate at this time. So that's a major blank in the submission. So for these reasons, I recommend the agency delay. I also understand some of the members were out there today, so you may have some specific questions to ask the applicant, and I encourage you to do so.
Thank you, Bob.
Good evening, Michael Mastrogiacomo, I'm the engineer for the project. Basically wanted to get some feedback. I know I need to clear up the biological narrative, but as Bob said, I'm developing also the restoration plan, so I'm trying to tie the two together to get that all together. As for alternatives, I believe in the report I did have a couple of sketches of a couple alternatives that my client was looking at. We can also look at some additional alternatives if you want.
Yeah, I think from Bob's comments, you have a long way to go on this for us to even have something to react to, beyond the fact that you're right up against the wetland line. Are there any other? I mean, until I have something to react to, it's hard for me to give you any concrete comments, but come back with a very robust restoration plan. Anything else?
Observation I would make too is that from where that wetland line is to bring the project back from it, because it's right up to it. And it just seems that the project area itself should be shrunk a bit, bring it closer to the road somehow.
Well, we've tried to utilize as much of the free, I call it free space, anything outside of the wetland area to try to maximize what my client, would like to
Right,
have.
but
I recognize that.
And we understand that there's really no definitive how many feet you have to be away from the wetland line.
well, what's our normal buffer in this part of town?
35 feet?
It's a 100-foot upland review area. It's a non-drinking water supply watershed. So
You'd expect 35 feet?
At a minimum, right?
it's before the current approach, we would have been looking for something like 35 feet in this area. But, with redevelopment projects, I mean, if it were a pool or something, I mean, it's a blank slate. They have to do restoration, and they're going to build a house, so.
I'm trying to provide Mr.
Yes, some guidance.
Giacomo a little guidance here.
Yeah.
By the way, there's also a drain, if you look on the map. There's a road drain over here that comes across. There's a little pool there. It discharges, but it just discharges into a little pit,
Right.
which makes me think that there's some sort of a drain or pipe that goes all the way across the property to the river.
We've spoken to DPW. They're looking into, engineering is looking into see if they have anything on record for that, and they're supposed to get back to us.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, as far as the 35-foot buffer, when I had my meetings with Mr. Clausen, I didn't get that 35-foot.
It's not a set-in-stone number. It sort of
Okay.
depends upon what the, you're starting with a blank slate here, so you can, look at a couple of different ways of deploying the structures on there. You know what the environment looks to the north and south of the property, and, frankly, we'd be looking at that to eventually have that be contiguous.
Both of those properties, especially the one to the south, is actually, that lawn area is further back in that wetland area than we are. We're actually trying to pull it back and clean it up and restore it, so then it's back to a certain quote-unquote native state.
Right.
Try to make it better. But, I mean,
When we
we've
see
got to find a
something.
little happy balance between everything.
Well, when we see something we can react to, we can give you some more definitive
Okay, and
feedback.
I mean, I don't know how much more I'm going to be able to move anything with my clients' wants and locations of septics and all that.
well, can I just say, I'll just say one thing related to our conversations. I mean, if you look at the alternatives in the narrative packet, you'll note that they don't include rain gardens. And the initial submission that was made, had I think it was a 10-foot retaining wall right on the wetland line no rain gardens, everything was going into the ground. And I said, well, number one, you can't build the wall and maintain the wall in the future, standing in the wetlands. So let's pull it off, at least 5 feet. That's what I said. I didn't say only 5 feet, but, and I also said, you can't put all the drainage in the ground. You have to use a low-impact development measure. And what are you going to use the corners of the property for? Frankly, so, I mean, the applicant was responsive in getting these lid measures put in here, which, if we had a planting plan that showed that those are going to be planted up as native areas, could maybe address some of your buffer concerns.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. I would say to continue to have conversations with staff, working through these. Be very aggressive on the restoration, and we'll see you next month.
Okay, great.
Just one comment.
Sure.
To what Mr. Benton said. Where he indicated there was water coming through on the west side, there's also a storm drain directly opposite that, the east side, which is, I guess, what you're going to get an answer from. But whether they're connected together is questionable. So you need to really look at both. Where does that storm drain go to, and what actually happens to the water that runs off to the west and then somehow goes onto the property and there's a big puddle?
Right, yeah, well, that's why we approached DPW to see exactly if they had any record, because we couldn't see anything of which way it flows. Might be clogged, we're not sure.
Okay.
They're supposed to get back to us and let us know.
Very good. Yep. You've seen several very qualified landscape architects and soil scientists, engineers here tonight. I'd suggest you have a conversation with one of them about your next steps.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any public questions or comments on this? Is there a motion?
Motion to delay.
Second?
Great. Second.
All in favor? See you next month. Thank you. Okay, on to 2017-047, 2 Lower Cross Road, SE Minor and Company, Inc., for Jordan Wolowitz, for construction of a pool, patios, drainage, grading, landscaping, and fence relocation adjacent to wetlands. Mr. Clausi, please.
Okay, I want to just refer back to the prior approvals on this property. Let's see. The agency, when this property was developed with the house that's here, the agency did approve a pool and terrace behind the house in basically the same location as currently being proposed. Most of these structures are beyond the 100-foot upland review area. However, there are activities proposed closer, those being tree clearing and grading to create a level lawn area back here behind the house. There's also drainage structures which are required to take the increased impervious area of the pool patios, and there's a little residential bump out here adjacent to the pool.
I'm sorry, Bob. Doreen, could you just zoom into that, tighter to that area? Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is the little addition. That's the pool there. This is not all terrace. There are just 3 separate terrace areas or patio areas around the pool, and I think the rest of this is lawn. This is lawn, but it is, a more than 1,000 square foot increase in impervious coverage. Let's see. This is a property, the wetland delineation's a little bit screwy on this. Back in 1994, when the house was built, the wetland line ran right around here. That was a Bruce Lasky line. This current application was submitted after Jim McManus revisited the property, and he flagged a more extensive wetland along the west side of Horseneck Brook. We've had situations like this in the past in Conyers Farm. Typically, or let's say the agency has in the past recognized that the property, the ball's rolling down the hill, they're basing a lot of the stuff on this old line. So, a lot of my comments are related to separating distance of activities from this old line, not Mr. McManus's line. So looking at the planting plan that has been submitted with this application, what this planting plan does is it eliminates, basically eliminates lawn areas within about 75 feet or more from the Lasky wetland line. And there was a condition in the 93 permit that required a 75-foot wide undisturbed upland buffer. So, I think this is a good step forward on the property. The planting plan that was originally submitted was a little bit light, I thought, in that it didn't include any trees, but now this plan has been revised to include an equivalent number of trees to what will be removed from basically the 75-foot radius out from the McManus wetland line. So I think, it's kind of a hybrid analysis on this project. The applicant has been responsive to this. We did have a question about whether the rain garden here, which is just at the edge of the 100-foot upland review area, could be tucked against this edge of the terrace or the pool area, which would save probably 3 trees up here. So maybe the applicant can address that this evening. There are some other little issues with PVC drain pipes that I think can be cut back and their discharges reinforced. Landscaping debris dump down in this area that has to come out. So I guess I'd like you guys to talk about the drainage proposal and what you could do to even further reduce tree removal.
Okay,
Thank you,
hi,
Bob.
Pete Weiland from SE Minor. Sorry. So to address the rain garden location, I spoke with the engineers this afternoon, and the rain garden can be relocated closer to the pool, a little bit further east, I think that is, up on the map. Sorry, west, okay, east is that way, right. But the tree removal plan is separate from the rain garden location. So the trees are not being removed in that location as a result of the placement of the rain garden. The tree removal plan was developed in conjunction with the whole landscaping plan, and the client would prefer to keep the tree removal plan the same. I'd like to point out that the developed area within the 150-foot Lasky line is about 17,000 square feet, and the whole restoration plan along the wetlands is also about 17,000 square feet. That was not by mistake. The idea was that there's this disturbed area, and we would mitigate the disturbance with a similar sized development and elimination of lawns and restoration of the buffer from the wetland.
I just was thinking of something. Is removal of these trees up here, is that also due to shading of the pool, perhaps?
Yes.
Okay.
if you have other questions.
But I guess, Bob, with the trees, if the trees were going regardless, is there a preference where the rain garden sits? It doesn't need to move then necessarily.
No, I think it's, I mean, if I hadn't put two and two together on that. Yeah, I think the rain garden right now is set on the contour, which is better
That's right.
than trying to artificially shove it against the line of the pool enclosure.
Okay.
I'd agree.
So I recommend the agency issue a permit with the conditions provided.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Any public questions or comments on this application? No? Would someone like to
Motion
make?
to approve.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Okay. And finally, for new applications, we have 2017-048, 32 Hedifred Road, SE Minor and Company, Inc., for Pasquale and Rosina Iachetta for installation of restoration, plantings, and grading in wetlands.
Okay, the applicant requested that this application be delayed until next month.
Okay. Anything further to add to that? Just,
Only that we're working
We're
with
working
staff.
on it.
Yeah, getting some
Okay.
more information, working on a plan, so.
excellent.
That's it.
Okay. Motion to delay.
Second to do that.
All in favor? Done. Okay, very good. We have, for agent approvals, there are 6 tonight. I will just read out the application numbers and locations, and then if there is anyone who wishes to discuss them further, or anyone in the audience that wishes to petition to move this to the regular agenda, please speak up. 2017-025, 61 Portchuck Road. 2017-026, 23 Portchuck Road. 2017-030, 141 Cat Rock Road. 2017-032 Greenfield Place, Lot Number 2. 2017-039, 26 Dandy Drive. And finally, 2017-049, 11 Forge Road. Are there any questions from the agency or the public on any of these applications? Okay, very good. Moving along, we have a busy month next month. Is there a motion to receive items numbered 1 through 14 on tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor? All right, excellent, thank you. Okay, we have one item of old business, 2017-028, 13 Carriage Road.
This
Guys
is an
are really-
application in order that the agency dealt with at the special meeting of April 10th, but the property owner, Erie Sturrock, received inconsistent information with regards to when this application would be heard.
Okay.
So they have asked that they have the opportunity to speak with the agency. Since the agency already acted on it, we do need a 2/3 vote to reopen that discussion.
Okay, I will make a motion to reopen for discussion for the benefit of the owner. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, it is reopened. Would anyone from, please?
Thanks for giving us a chance to
Okay.
prepare it. Kind of very small, couple pages explaining where we are and why passing you with this application.
Okay, thank you.
Always good to put the kids in the photos, good.
So I wanted to go over a bit of history with respect to the project that we're going to discuss.
Okay.
A lot of it is in the document, so whatever works for you, feel free to read it or feel free to follow me. So we've purchased the property in June of 2012. At the time when the property was purchased, there was no notion of the wetlands that were identified on the property line. Had I known that there was, wetlands, we probably would have made a different decision with respect to getting this house. October 2012, of course, the Hurricane Sandy hit, and we've lost about 9 trees around the property. 5 of the trees were in the back of the house, exactly where the area is that is being discussed. Last year, so in terms of pictures, unfortunately, kids were the only ones who actually enjoyed the Hurricane Sandy, right? We ended up cleaning up after it. And, anyway, summer of last year, we decided that it's time for us to add a little bit of flat area around the house. So the house is kind of on the top. It's right on the ledge. And both in front and in the back, we have a very rocky structure, and basically it goes down in a slope. So we've decided to flatten it a little bit to allow our kids to actually area to play. I did approach the town of Greenwich. I talked to the building department and the zoning department asking if I need to get a permit in order to build a retaining wall. Given the fact that the wall was 2 feet high, basically the advice for me was, given the fact that there is no wetlands that was identified on the property line, that I'm okay to proceed, that we're okay to proceed and build a retaining wall. Thus, that's what we've done. Late last year, we decided to proceed with building an attached garage on our property. In order to do the garage, we needed to apply for a permit. When the permit was pulled, I talked to the agency staff, and they recommended us to do the study to see if we have any wetlands. The study did come back with, yes, we have small wetlands area in the back of the property, very close to where the retaining wall got built. I think somewhere in the application it was mentioned that the retaining wall is about 5 feet from the wetlands. In fact, it's about 12 feet in the shortest area, in the smallest area. So at that point, the staff visited the property, looked at it, and basically told us that we have to correct it, that the retaining wall was built improperly, and we need to do something about it. The application for the garage building was approved. We're proceeding with it now. So now it's a second application is in front of this agency. So we're now at the point when we realized that something needed to be done. I think the advice that we received from Bob and Maureen was to hire the soil engineer and bring them in to see what can be done for us to improve the situation. The recommendation was to add the rain garden and add additional vegetation. The soil scientists had agreed with this, and that's the proposal that is in front of you. So basically, the request that we have is to allow us to retain the retaining wall, to allow us to keep the area that is flat. We're not using it as a lawn. There's no fertilizers that are being done in there. I mean, our water pump is right next to this area, so we're not going to add any, chemicals to the soil in this area, and add the rain garden, add some additional vegetation in the back, around the wetlands, and then ensure that we do everything according to the agency requirements.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't here at the last meeting, so is anything that has been stated, please, Bob.
All right, Doreen wasn't here either. She wrote the report, as I recall.
Okay.
The director presented it. Neither of us was aware that the Sturks hadn't been provided with a copy of the report and been told that we were going to discuss it on the 10th.
Okay.
If I'd been aware of that, I would have, and I'm sure Pat would too, would have immediately said, we can discuss it, but maybe let's not act on it until tonight. So
Okay.
I think it's great that you're willing to hear the story. The other thing is, again, because no one from your side came to the meeting, I kind of thought that, A, I thought you knew about it, and B, I thought, well, if they know about it and they're not here, they must not care about it, because these are the recommendations in the report. So I didn't even speak out. There are a couple of things that were presented in the report that I have a little different view on. One of which was being that there was a statement in the report that said there was not a lawn behind the house. when I look at the aerial photos from 2008, it's what I would call a rough lawn. There are trees above it, and it was a rough lawn below it. It was very similar in the color infrared lawn color to other lawn areas in this vicinity at that time of year when that photo was taken. So I think there was a lawn behind the house. I don't think it extended quite this far away from the house.
Measured about 35 feet based on the aerials, back from the house?
To the wall or to the old
with
one?
the old line.
Yeah, I mean, there was it probably was more in this area. So this is probably this area that was extended. And in talking to the Sturks, one of the recommendations was, number one, you can apply for whatever you want. You're not necessarily going to get it approved.
Sure.
But if you want to apply to maintain the wall, we recommended doing some kind of a rain garden along the top to act as extend the distance between the pond and the edge of the lawn and act as a filter. Which you did.
We have in the proposal.
Which
right?
you did.
Yeah, in application.
So the other thing in the report, and I'm interested to hear Mr. Sturk tonight, he said that the wall is only cemented on the top, because the statement in the report was that the wall was completely cemented, which I think the agency last month or last meeting was concerned that there was no seepage from that area to the wetland.
Yeah. And this I could address that. That was my mistake when Darren asked the question in terms of how solid the wall was. I've looked at one area of the wall and it was cemented all the way in the back, all the way from top to bottom. It was all the way to the side, the farthest part from the wetlands. The rest of the wall is just cemented on top, and there's definitely infiltration. I was able to observe it last week with all of the rains that was happening.
Okay, so I think, it was an unauthorized regulated activity. It's not quite as egregious as I think that report made it sound last meeting. And the fact that the applicant is willing to come out, I mean, that's important too.
Thank you. So where do we net out last month then?
I'll be the heavy of the group.
Okay.
If Sturks had come in and said, I'm looking to have my 35-foot lawn and push it back another 30 feet or so, clear whatever trees remained, build a wall, fill, I would have said that's not something you'd likely get a permit for. Bringing lawns are pretty bad in the scheme of things, up to a pond area, which is an obvious wetland area. It's not something I would have encouraged somebody to spend their time and money pursuing. But of course, it's anybody's option to do so. And I would look to the agency to look at this project. Is it something that it's not there now? Look at this as if it's being proposed. And is this something that you would have approved? Because if the answer is no, then it shouldn't be approved after the fact. It sends one, it's not appropriate for the wetland, and it, as a policy, it fosters more violations and it fosters better to, and I'm not challenging at all, there's no judgment at all about how you came to do this or all that. I'm just, people come to these decisions in all kinds of ways, so I'm not suggesting anything nefarious on your part.
No, I completely understand it. So the point, again, right, in terms of vegetation and tree removal, nothing happened during this project. We didn't remove any trees. In fact, this area ended up just being bare with the trunks that were laying all over the property. So what we're suggesting, I think, will restore the vegetation to the state, not necessarily to the state it was before Sandy, but there's definitely going to be a lot more whatever trees and bushes, whatever was recommended to be built in there. And then as far as how we ended up here, we are where we are. Had I known that there was wetlands in there, had somebody told me that that's the
There's
case?
a pond.
A pond is a wetland, just
So
for.
now that I know that, it's going to be a lot easier for us to make this determination. Another point is that the pond is there just for 3 months out of a year. So in a few more weeks, it's going to be completely dry. Again,
That
is it the
actually-
wetlands?
That's not what you know, I don't see the documentation that says in this particular area that was straight off the back of the house, that some trees fell and wiped it completely clean. That's, it'd be a crazy coincidence. I imagine that, yes, there was significant damage, but I see that there's, you know, a whole host of
lot of other trees
different
in-
size material in here. So
Right.
I totally get that you had some pretty good damage, but it wasn't clear-cut effectively. So it seems to me
Unfortunately-
that additional work was done to really clear it out. So
Well,
it's-
yes.
yeah.
I mean, so at this point, right, it's my word against the gas. Again, I'm not suggesting that you're implying that I'm lying here. I get it. We don't have, those are the pictures that are the best pictures that show what happened in the back of a house, right, on the backyard. Unfortunately, I don't have anything that shows, you know, the house with nothing else in there. But that's
Yes.
the
So
best we
these
can
were
do.
the areas that the trees fell,
Yes,
and there's a lot of smaller material that's left behind.
right.
So
And this smaller material is still there. It's all beyond the wall.
not in the filled section.
It's all
not.
beyond the wall, right next
Yeah.
to the pond.
So in the filled section, I suspect had smaller material left behind.
Smaller trees.
It wasn't lawn, though.
No trees,
Okay.
no bushes in this area. And maybe it was because, you know, the lawn was there before we moved in. But by the time when we got the property, it was sitting unoccupied for a year and a half. So whatever was alive there probably died, you know, when we moved in, by the time we moved in, so don't know, can't answer.
So I guess I wasn't here last month, so someone needs to sort of drive this a little bit, because you came to a decision last month, and now you're challenging that decision coming today?
Yes.
And so, and then what is being proposed instead of what was discussed last month? That's what
The
I'm-
applicant's proposal is to,
To
you
leave
know,
it
after
where it
the
is.
fact, to leave the fill, leave the stone wall with the addition of some plantings.
And the rain garden?
Rain garden.
Yes.
Okay.
Do we have, is it possible to show the proposal with the rain garden in it and the, you know, proposed restored vegetation?
All we have is the rain garden itself. We don't show it along the wall. It's not very easy to see. It's just a strip of vegetation. So this is what we received for the rain garden along the wall.
Wall is this,
Yes.
house would be over here.
Yes.
And then there's additional plantings below the wall that includes trees and shrubs.
Okay, it's part of the proposal. And that was not, and this is the first time we're seeing it now?
No, it was presented at the
At the
April 10th.
previous.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that
I don't know exactly where we are.
Yeah, and the conclusion of the April 10th meeting was, what was the decision that was rendered?
The wall and the fill had to go, and the area had to be restored.
Okay.
Seems too much to me.
Um,
I'm not inclined with that.
Okay. Um,
Well, is there a middle ground alternative here that leaves the wall?
So this leaves the wall, but what I'm not seeing is what other plantings are proposed.
I can show you that as well. It was 5 native canopy trees and 19 shrubs, but I can show you what the plan looks like.
Actually, yes, okay.
That's what the area looks like.
That's the separating distance between the wall and the resource.
This is the top of the wall with the lawn.
Right, and so you're saying that, and that's the area where the 5 trees came down from these, that's what we're, because what I'm seeing is many, many other trees that are still standing.
In the back, right?
Well, this one, all of these over here. Is this is, what I'm looking at in this photo here,
So if you look at the section
I'm looking at the
here,
back of your house,
This picture was taken from the middle of the pond
towards the back.
towards the back.
And so I see that these trees came down and these were removed, but all of these other trees were taken out as
And
well.
No, those trees are still standing.
Okay,
They're still there. So you can see
Okay.
that there is a bit of open area right behind that tree, all the
Okay.
way to the house. That's the area
This
that's been
area
changed.
is
got it. Okay,
Those two
It
trees that
far
you see
end
up
of the
front,
retaining
but
wall.
they're still standing.
okay. And so this is your planting plan?
Right to the rear of
You're-
the
I'm
house.
looking at this now.
So the retaining wall is actually in this area here.
Let me see.
We have caliper sizes on those?
So those trees did fall in front.
Okay, thank you.
We have caliper sizes on those trees, proposed trees?
Yes, we do. Well, we had asked them, the shrubs were 3 to 4 feet in height. We asked them to increase the size of the canopy trees to 2 to 2.5 inches in caliper. And then they had provided us those revised planting sizes, so they were increased
Okay, and this
properly.
is all what was presented on April 10th?
I was not here, but
Okay,
I assumed
okay.
it was.
That was
Very
part of the
good.
application. Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess, any other agency questions for, someone like to make a revised motion on this? I mean, seeing this, I'm of the mind to accept this proposal, but
I am too. Keep the wall.
Sorry, Pat. Said, sorry, Pat.
I just don't, well, it's all your decision.
is there another, Klaus?
Is that a motion that you made?
I'm not making a motion, I'm just trying to get a sense of the agency. I wasn't part of the discussion that was had last month.
I would agree with you. I think that this is a case where we should use our judgment and be a little bit charitable, and let's,
Can I get an understanding of, I mean, so we have to guide people, so if somebody comes in before the work is done, what do we tell that person?
Well, the problem here is that before the work was done, we don't know what the area looked like before the work was done.
We do have a sense, because we know from aerial photographs that there was a wooded
Well,
transition.
there was some wood,
There was not lawn up to a pond's edge.
well, no, and there isn't lawn up to the pond edge now. And how much is the lawn?
Pretty darn close. If you go back to the retaining wall, where it shows the retaining wall in the pond. And the next one up. Yep. So that's a, you know, that's close.
It's still not to the edge, though. We still have anywhere from 12 to 20 feet in there.
And a vernal pool, which is, from what you're describing, probably have, I mean, the regulated area is 100 feet for a reason. And clearly, we can't get 100 feet because
Right.
what is.
I'm going to have to move my house.
Right,
If
which we're
100
not
feet is
asking
the
you to
requirement.
do.
Well, thanks for that,
Right,
yes.
yeah. They're not asking that.
Well, I guess I'll make a motion.
I'm just wondering what the justification is. I understand it's really hard when you guys are here. It's hard to
Well,
discuss having
Also
something
worked
go
with the
away that
agency
you
that
wanted.
I felt like very closely. We understood it's something that needed to be addressed. I think we've been very open in terms of what needs to be done, listened to all of the suggestions, hired the scientists, brought them in, made sure that they've addressed all of the issues that the agency staff had raised. So
I'd make a motion to approve the revised, the plan is presented by the, I guess this would be an application, right?
second.
Discussion?
I think we should discuss it. Yeah, because I think there may be alternatives here that we haven't looked at. And one at least is to expand the area of the rain garden and plantings. Leave the wall, but take away more of the lawn with suitable plantings.
Because right now, it's a strip. You would look at that being.
And what would have been there before would have been understory and some trees. So perhaps if we just expand what is being called a rain garden into a more extensive planted area, we can achieve some of the same results.
So I'll just make a statement that the soil scientist, when she was doing the calculation, her suggestion was to do it basically in terms of size. One specific level, I don't remember exact numbers. We ended up going 25% above her recommendation in terms of size of the rain garden.
The depth.
The concern seems to be that had you come in beforehand, we would not have said, yes, you can put in a wall next to a vernal pool and then fill behind it. No way. Vernal pool does dry out. It's important for the lives of critters. You ought to look into the effects and importance of a vernal pool on Professor Google. You'll get a lot of.
Now I know what vernal pool is.
This is good. This is good. But even so, if we brought the plantings back into here and created more habitat for critters and things, we might be able to strike a balance.
So more of a 10-foot deep buffer above the wall?
Yeah. How deep is, there's the wall, yeah, and a 10-foot deep buffer on the other side of the wall as well.
Right now, you've got probably one row of plants, so it's maybe 3 feet deep.
It's 3 to 6.
Okay.
Where's the one with the rain garden on it? Is this showing the rain garden or not?
It does not. I'll give you that.
Sorry, we've done this proposals in phases and waves, so that's why.
That's okay.
So that's what you're looking at?
Okay.
So it narrows there, so I would make, I mean,
So we
where the
bring
four
it,
and
we
the-
bring it out like this.
So the minimum depth anywhere from the wall is 10 feet.
Yeah.
Could you also indicate which part of the wall is cemented? I think
It's the top, right?
No.
No, this section down.
Which part?
Gary, it's the section down here.
You can see it's the section that's further in there. It's the section that's furthest from the pond.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So let's add.
I would amend my motion to say, to approve the plan as presented with the exception that the buffer planting plan be revised to be a minimum of 10 feet deep upslope from the wall. And that proposal to be reviewed with staff.
Do you mean the rain garden plantings?
Well,
This would be a minimum of 10 feet deep uphill of the wall,
Okay.
so that buffer. And then you have what's proposed below the wall. What is proposed.
Yeah, my proposal wasn't necessarily that it be the rain garden, Dorian, that it be native plants, shrubs, things where the critters that have now lost some of their habitat can get a little bit of it back. Okay?
Native plantings.
Native plantings.
Does it have to be on the long portion of the wall?
Oh, yes, that's the point. That's the point.
As long as we know what you expect.
10 feet from the wall
Minimum.
up, minimum.
Rather than asking you to remove the fill in the wall, what I'm asking you to do is, well, sorry, you can't have all the lawn you wanted, but let's put some plantings in there.
Okay.
So you'll give back some lawn,
Sure, no, that's reasonable.
okay?
And then, in terms of process, how,
You would review, you would have that plan developed and review it with staff.
Okay.
The wetland staff.
Okay.
So that's our motion.
Yep.
Is there a second to that motion?
Well, Klaus, does he want to
Klaus?
be the second?
No, I like the original motion you made better. I think this is a case where I think we should be a lot more lenient, and I think the original proposal is sufficient.
Okay, so,
I'll second the revised.
okay, well, we have a motion with a second for what is on the screen. We have to vote on that. If that is denied, then you can make your revised motion.
Okay.
Okay. All in favor of Klaus's motion of what is
That's
on
your
the
motion.
screen? Was that? My
Your
motion. That was my motion.
It was your motion.
Okay. So all in favor of that signify by saying aye.
No.
Okay, so that's one.
We want a little bit more.
Elliot, would you like to make a motion?
Make a motion to instruct the applicant to increase the size of the plantings to an area at least 10 feet. I don't know which direction is, toward the house,
Upslope.
from the wall at all points.
I can second that.
Okay. Discussion? All in favor?
Done.
Say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One opposed?
Who's opposed? Klaus?
Klaus.
Okay.
Okay. Clear as mud? Okay.
We'll see. Thank you.
So just follow up with staff on that
Keep the
plan.
wall and
Okay.
keep that plan.
All right. On to violations. We have an cease and correct order 2017-03 for George Mead, 325 Riversville Road, unauthorized deposition of fill and clearing of vegetation adjacent to wetland and watercourses area. Do we take this and number 2 together?
Yes, please.
Okay, and also number 2, cease and correct order 2017-07 for Louise Gioia, sorry, there's no L in there, Junior, 325 Riversville Road, unauthorized deposition of fill and clearing of vegetation adjacent to wetland watercourses areas. Doreen, please.
Okay, so at the March meeting, we had a violation summary and report. The agency made a motion to have a application submitted to correct the violation with a deadline of April 18th, 2017. We have not received that application. I did speak with the agent for the homeowner at 325 Riversville Road, who said that they are working on getting the current topography map, which was not provided to them yet. He expected to have it by last Friday or this Monday. I asked him to respond to me to let me know if he received it and where he stands with that submission. I did not hear from him today. He was made aware that it was going to be on the agenda. The agency determined that if we didn't get the application, it should be referred to the law department. I'm hoping that we would receive that application within the next week or so. However, referring it to the law department, we could pull that back if we receive the application timely. And that also goes for 327 Riversville Road, who is the adjacent property owner who didn't participate in the violation, but the materials on their lawn or on their property rather. And so they're involved with that as well. They've been made aware that this was on the agenda tonight as well.
Okay, thank you. No one here from either of those parties, I take it? Okay, so is there a motion to maintain? I will make it, I guess. Motion to maintain cease and correct orders. Do we need a?
Yeah,
Well-
just you direct staff to refer to legal.
Okay.
If after a week we don't get something.
You can do it now. I mean, by the time we get our stuff copied and send it down
Okay.
there.
Motion to direct staff to refer these items to the legal department for follow-up.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, cease and correct order 2017-09 for Tamarack Country Club, 55 Locust Road, unauthorized deposition of material within wetland and buffer areas.
I'm going to quickly give you the record of documents for 55 Locust Road, GIS map, field investigation dated April 12, 2017, field photos dated April 12, 2017, 6 aerial maps dating 2003, 2008, and 2013 of the 2 areas of concern, Stop work order issued April 18th, 2017. Letter dated April 18th, 2017. Cease and correct order issued April 18th, 2017. And violation summary issued April 18th, 2017. Staff was called out on a report that some trees were being cleared in the areas of the 3rd and 15th fairways and the Tamarack Country Club. Staff met with the superintendent of the golf course, who indicated that there was no clearing taking place. He also offered staff a cart to go inspect the 2 areas that were being questioned. Staff went out to the sites using the golf cart. They did find no clearing, but they did find on the way back 2 locations on the site that were being used for dumping organic material and debris. The first area was adjacent to the 16th fairway. The second area was adjacent to the 17th tee. There have been some previous applications that show that there's been debris deposited within these areas or on the site overall, the golf course, that were remedied. But there's this current violation. A violation was issued and a cease and correct order was issued on April 18th, 2017. Staff's recommending that the agency maintain the cease and correct order and put a certificate of violation on the land records if an application to correct the violation is not received by May 19th, 2017.
Okay, thank you. Anyone here for Mr. Kenny?
Good evening, Bill Kenny for the Tamarack Country Club. I just wanted to make you aware that the club is going to move quickly to be very responsive. They've retained me. I was out at the site on Friday to take a look at the areas, and we're going to put together an application package for a resolution to this, and we'll set up a meeting with the staff to look at all the information they've gathered with the aerial photos and so forth, and put together a package and submit it to you. The general manager is here this evening with me, Brian Gillespie.
Okay.
Is that date okay? May 19th?
It may be a little tight if some surveying work is needed.
And I take it this is, we've had problems with these areas being used for deposition of
Previous
organic debris?
applications have shown that, yes.
Okay.
I had.
So we may want to look at some sort of demarcation or some features that will clearly show that this isn't something we should be doing going forward. Okay.
Is the dumping being done by the staff at the club?
Yes.
So not an outside contractor came in to do anything and then dumped?
I don't believe so, no.
So therefore, instruction to the staff, who some part of the staff is permanent party, some are part-time, but that should, once and for all, if they know where they cannot dump, should fix it.
Yes.
And is the major issue from now on just physically removing what's been dumped?
I believe so.
Okay. And possibly putting some kind of a demarcation, but?
Yes.
Okay.
It doesn't sound very complicated.
No, no.
Okay. So the 19th, you'll let us know if the 19th isn't.
Okay. Well, we'll get a meeting right away and figure out what we're going to be doing, and then we'll have a better idea of how it might affect us.
Fair enough.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Would someone like to make a motion?
Motion to maintain the cease and correct order.
Okay.
The deadline of, actually, I guess, do we want to put that back?
May 19th?
If they think that's a little tight, do we want to change?
I'm fine if you want to push that back. That's okay.
So if it went to the
June 1st?
26th,
Is that
okay?
Is the 19th?
Another week?
So that's the deadline for?
It is. It'll bring it into the next monthly meeting.
So keep it the 19th, and if
Keep it the 19th.
in discussions it turns out that more work has to be done, then we can allow it to slide forward.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? All right. Okay, thank you very much. Cease and correct order 2017-10 for Diana Litchfield, 36 Sherwood Avenue, authorized tree removal within a wetland and buffer area, and reconstruction of a deck within a wetland buffer area.
Okay, the office received a call regarding tree removal in and adjacent to a wetland, so I went out and had a look at the site. Diana Litchfield, who was here this evening, she was at the site, and we walked and understood kind of what was going on. They are newer to the home, and trees were removed in and adjacent to wetlands. The vegetation had come up over the years fairly close to an existing in-ground pool, and the front yard, which was pretty heavily wooded, has been thinned, and some top dressing put out in that area. And the deck was rebuilt, which I think is now being corrected. There was not a building permit for that, which is why we did not get a referral from the building department. So Mrs. Litchfield has indicated that her intent is to restore the area as deemed necessary. And you've got not much else than that for this evening.
Okay.
So the list of documents, there's the cease and correct order dated April 19th, 2017, and the violation summary that is attached to that with photographs.
Do we know if this was a recently purchased property? I take it?
Come on up.
I'm sorry, please, come on up. I guess my question for that, I guess, is more to staff in terms of, was a welcome letter, were your Friendly Wetlands Agency letter sent to?
Yes, I think that
Ms.
back in
Litchfield?
August.
Received, no, we actually purchased the property in December of
I'm sorry.
2016, and the letter was received after everything had been done, which was late March, was when we received the letter. I'm sorry, I don't have a copy. I do have it at the house.
That's okay.
So I was a bit surprised and shocked and hurt and upset and frustrated when we received the letter and also then realized what had happened because, well, my husband, we weren't really aware of the severity
Right.
of what was happening, and we also weren't initially planning on doing anything outside. It was our contractor that sort of convinced us. Also, along with the inspection report, which, was very serious, of which I have here, and he talked about the deck being deteriorating and decay, and, it's every wood is rotting, improper conditions were viewed, ground contact noted. So that was for the deck, and we knew we had to, and we have young children, we didn't want,
And dropping through the deck.
yeah.
Can you go?
And we also,
Start with 2 kids, where's the other one?
the inspection report said that as far as the trees, that maintenance needed, trim plantings away from structure, trees planted close to structure, removal may be needed, trees are touching or overhanging the roof, removal may be needed. And so we were sort of going based on, as new homeowners, we moved to Greenwich 3 years ago. We've been renting at a house on Rockwood Lane Spur for the past 3 years. My husband's a school teacher. We found a property under $1 million. We were happy to be able to afford it.
Yeah.
And
Probably because it had a lot of wetlands on
now we know why.
it. There you have it. Okay, so you're putting together an application. We'll be seeing it next week, or next month,
Yep.
I'm assuming?
Yes, however, I'm looking through this long list of the checklist and the location map. We have the only,
The list seems more onerous than it actually is. You can come in any day between 8 and 1 to the counter, or we can make an appointment, and we can help pull together some of that information we can tick off pretty quickly.
okay. One of my concerns is the only site plan, which is a survey, right? Is a site plan is the same thing as a survey. The only one I've been able to find on record is from 1979. It's quite small. It does show, if you really zoom in, it does show the existing deck, the existing deck.
And does it have the
Which is
pool
no
on there,
longer-
too? Does it have the pool? Or that was before the pool?
And I don't know when the pool was built. But the owners that from whom we bought the house had been there since 1964. Which explains why there was so much overgrowth, and that
Yeah.
she was an elderly
Right.
woman, and she hadn't really done anything with the property in years.
Yeah, the deck is an easy thing to work through after the fact. If you had come in and said, I need to replace the deck, we would have
Right.
hit you up with a permit. That's an easy
Yeah,
one.
no, and I just naively, I guess I assumed it was a grandfathered thing, and I don't know, I didn't realize, but now we know, and I think that from because I went to visit the building department today, and they said that the deck has to, I don't know, it has to be a certain amount of feet from the property line.
Yeah, I think you'll be fine because it's between the house, the pool, and the garage,
Because
so you
my
should be.
concern with having the discussion with him was that we were going to have to now hire somebody to come do a survey for the property to show the new plan and everything, even though the new deck is shorter and not nearly as far reaching out, encroaching towards the property
Yeah,
line.
I can't
as the
speak
old
for
one.
But they'll
what their
require-
needs are, where their flexibilities are,
Uh-huh.
but I'm more than happy to help with the multi-department discussion and then see what we can,
Right.
Okay, that would be great.
Yeah,
It's
arrange.
just been a little overwhelming.
So I would just, just schedule some time with Pat or Bob or.
Yeah, we can help
Okay,
Yep.
great.
simplify this a little bit.
Thank you.
Okay.
So that the house is the value you thought it was, not the albatross, it sounds like.
Well, we knew it was, the house itself needed a ton of work.
yeah.
But all these other
So
little
we saw that,
surprises.
and we just saw the structure and thought, oh, well, we can, redo the bathrooms, and we can redo the kitchen. What I didn't realize was, yes, I was aware of the wetlands in the property, and I knew that like 2/3 of the property was wetlands. What I didn't know was the entire property is really, including the house and all the other side that isn't wetlands, is also subject.
It's in the review area.
Area, yeah.
I didn't know that, so we were sort of assuming, there was just, I guess there's 100-foot, I'm like, well, 100 feet is the entire property,
is,
nothing
pretty
can
much,
be
yeah.
done. So that probably is why a developer didn't buy it, because they know better.
It'll all work out.
Yep.
It will all work out.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for coming.
Safe home. Motion to maintain cease and correct order, 2017-10. Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Motion to release the bonds.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Okay. Thank you. And that concludes tonight's entertainment. 9:33. All you multitudes watching at home, thank you.
No, they didn't have the cameras up.